And Amy Cokayne will come round the corner and the hooker will put boot to ball.
Out into the open goes Fernati.
Oh, little ball round the corner, wasn't going to quite work, and it's Emily Scarratt who will pick up the scraps, and Scarratt's going to get the chance to streak away.
If I'm honest, in my head I was like, this is probably me. Like, I've obviously had 15-year career, been to an Olympic Games, like I've done unbelievable things that I never ever set out to do. So I think in my head I was like, I'm pretty happy. Like, I still don't want to, go through a surgery that could really compromise the rest of my life. You're listening to the England Rugby Podcast, O2 Inside Line. I'm Emily Scarratt. I'm Emily Scarratt. I play for the Red Roses and Loughborough Lightning. So I play centre, mostly outside centre, but I've obviously played a bit of inside as well. And a centre is basically, they're almost like the back row of the backs. So you kind of do a little bit of everything, often required on a hard line, or the link between the playmakers and the edges. And then, you have to front up defensively as well. I think a really good centre needs to have like everything, and I appreciate that's quite cliche, but a really good passing game, short and long, a really good kicking game, again, short and long, just to offload sometimes or to push those little ones in behind. Obviously needs to be really strong defensively, and then a little bit of pace never goes amiss as well. I grew up in Leicestershire, West Leicestershire. I grew up on my family farm, which was obviously an amazing upbringing in terms of being out in the countryside a lot and just the freedom of that. Leicestershire is kind of a hotbed of rugby. Obviously, the Leicester Tigers is the big rugby team or the big sports team in the area. So grew up watching those guys. We had season tickets down at Welford Road for a bit. So that was kind of the real push. My dad used to play rugby as well. My brother played a bit as we were growing up. So it's always been a bit of a rugby household. I don't know how my parents would describe me as a child, but I think I was always really active. Like, I always wanted to be playing something. I think I probably annoyed my brother because I was always like, can we go outside and play, kick a ball, do something? I was probably the tomboy as well. So like, I was the girl that wanted to be playing football in the break times at school. I'd cycle to the park with my brother to play football with his friends. We were on holiday and I'd be the one wanting to kick a ball around or do something active. Like, I was never the girl that wanted to sit down, stay inside. Was never bothered about computer games or anything like that. And not Barbies either, surprisingly. The biggest memories from growing up on a farm is obviously just your ability to go and kind of wander around the fields, do whatever it was. Like, I was never that active on the farm in terms of helping out. I always thought I was being helpful, but probably not actually that useful. My farming skills are probably quite limited, but farming is a really tough lifestyle. Harvest time or in really busy periods, my dad would be up before I'd woken up and he'd be back in, after I'd gone to bed. Obviously he loves it and my brother now is doing a lot and he absolutely loves it as well, but it's certainly not an easy lifestyle. Often you wouldn't necessarily see my dad much during those busy periods, but, whenever they could, my parents would always come and support whatever it was that I was doing or my brother was doing. Like, I always loved the farm, but I probably always knew I was never going to be a farmer. I learned that pretty early on when my only skill was feeding the cows, It wasn't particularly a big skill set of mine. But I think I always wanted to be a PE teacher growing up or a police officer. I think I quite like those two things. Again, maybe glamorising police officers, but I wanted to chase people, basically. And then obviously being a PE teacher, just loved sport, loved that opportunity to be outside and playing a game or teaching others to play it. So they were the two things that I think from a kid I had thought in my mind I might want to be. So the first time I ever played rugby, I was 5 and it was down the local club, Leicester Forest. So my brother had started playing, he's 3 years older than me. He'd gone with my dad. He was playing on a Sunday morning, kind of with, all these children strewn across the field. And then I was just stood around, probably throwing a ball to myself or something because that's the type of child I was. And one of the coaches was like, do you just want to come and have a run around? Like, we've got a real mini group over here. I obviously did. And then apparently in the car on the way home, I was like, Dad, I want to go back and do that again. Like, I just loved it from the off. I was the only girl, didn't matter. I just, immediately just loved that sport, which was very cool. Like, it never bothered me that I was the only girl playing rugby. I think obviously you have your moments when all your, girlfriends are off doing something else on a Saturday and you want to go and play rugby with the boys. And maybe you start thinking, actually, is that what I should be doing? I think when you get a bit older, so you kind of get into that teenager-y bit, kind of mid-teenage years where, you do start to do more independently and you do start having to make decisions around whether you do want to play rugby or sport. I was playing loads of sports at the time, so there's loads of decisions to be made with stuff like that. Or actually they were going to town to go shopping, or obviously as you get a bit older, they're maybe going out on a night out or something. I don't think I ever felt it a sacrifice. It was just genuinely what I really wanted to do and what I enjoyed doing. I think sometimes when you came back to school on a Monday morning, they're talking about the weekend they've had and what they've been up to. Maybe there's a little bit, but I always knew that I wouldn't have enjoyed that as much as I did the rugby. And then obviously if you fast forward and you're actually part of, teams like this and Loughborough and obviously Lichfield and all the ones along the way, that's your core friendship group. They're the people that you have so much in common with, and you can now talk about all the things that you did on a weekend. You just have to go through that bit. But yeah, fundamentally, I did what I really enjoyed at those moments.
My name's Joe Scarratt. I'm Emily's older brother. I'm Mark Scarratt and I'm Emily's father. She has helped the game get where it's got to today because she's come from not the very start, but when it wasn't known, it wasn't broadcast on TV, and I think she'd like to think she'd been part of that. She won't have done it on her own. It's a team game. She's always the first one to say that she couldn't do it without the other 14 people on the pitch. We knew she was good. I'm not sure I could sit there and say, I knew she was going to be one of the best players in England, but by God, we knew she was good. I mean, I can remember that first game when she played for England. She played USA. There was like 250 people there and a few dogs. Now there's like 50,000. It's incredible. Well, when she won World Player of the Year, we were just incredibly proud. It was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. You only have to see how many people want a signature at the end of the game. I think that must be a testament to the inspiration that it gives to other people, yeah. What makes me most proud is the fact that her profession, she's got to the top of it, hasn't she? She's absolutely excelled, that she has been the best, and everyone can see it. That's got to be the proudest thing, hasn't it? Generally, people ask me, they say, you must be proud of what she's done. I am, but I'm really pleased that she's managed to do what she wanted to do and get to that point. That makes me happy.
Yeah, so I'd be 21, 22, I think, fresh out of uni, just completed my sports science degree at Leeds Met University, and then get a job at King Edward School in Birmingham as a PE assistant, essentially. It's an all-boys school, so they obviously do large 2 terms is rugby. You get your own team, which I was really excited about because obviously you help every afternoon with rugby, so you help in all the different teams, but then fundamentally on a Saturday morning, you have your team. So I started off with the under-13s and then I moved with them when they became under-14s the following year. I love that team. You spend so much time with them. They're a really good group of boys. Obviously there's some challenging moments in it. Obviously I end up being away quite a lot. I think we went to one sevens tournament once and we did really well, and we weren't really expected to do really well, and you're just like, this is so much fun because they're having the best time, you're having the best time, and you can just see the growth in them, which is super cool. So we obviously weren't professional at that point. So I was working a full-time job, and with it being a private school, we'd always have fixtures on a Saturday morning as well. So quite often in that week, you would maybe get up early to train, and obviously you'd train after school quite late yourself, and then potentially go with the boys Saturday morning and play your own fixture Saturday afternoon or Sunday. And then, there'd be obviously periods of the year around Six Nations or Autumn Internationals where, they were brilliant. My head of department, Chris Johnson, was amazing in terms of facilitating both of the things that I was trying to do. But it was quite challenging. So then I'd disappear and then you'd come back and the boys would all be like, miss, saw this or saw that. Have you got your medal if you won the Six Nations? Something like that, which is how cool is that? And I actually bumped into one of the boys, it'd probably be a year or two ago, who'd come to Loughborough University. So I was just in the gym and he walked up to me and was like, hey miss, do you recognise me? And I was like, these boys were 13 and he's now probably 20. So I kind of looked at him and I was like, I think I actually do. And he was like, I was such and such, I was part of your team. And I was like, yeah, how good. And he was still playing rugby, he was still loving it, all of that sort of stuff. So it's quite a cool opportunity when you have an influence on someone that young. So obviously becoming a professional rugby player was amazing. It was the best thing ever. It's definitely the best job I've ever had and probably will ever have. We'd actually started, again, a little bit while I was at school. We're in camp Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then you'd work the rest of the week and then bowl back round. So you kind of got a little taste of it, albeit you then had to scramble and get back to work. So actually when we did then become professional, it was almost like, what on earth do we do with all this time? We were so used to cramming everything in before, after work, during, in any free time that you had. You know, those opportunities to sit down, relax and kind of put Netflix on just wasn't a thing. So it was me, Katie and Mo that moved in together down in Surrey, which was weird for all of us because none of us are London girls. We were like, we're in London, and everyone's like, you're in Surrey. We were like, whatever. It's a weird one, I think, when people say the spotlight on Emily Scarratt, because for me, it was always the spotlight on the 2014 team and what we'd just done, and Katie as captain, and Maggie because she was a machine, and all those different bits that pieced together for it. I think it probably started almost like when I first got capped. So there was all this stuff. I think I'd scored like 12 tries in 12 caps or something like that. So there'd always been like a little bit of, I guess, noise around some of that stuff. And obviously at the time as well, media wasn't the biggest thing. So actually doing a lot of it felt very strange. Like I want to do the very best for my team always, but I don't want to do it for that. I want to do it for everyone else winning the gold medal. Do you know what I mean? That's always been the motivation. I don't know what would have happened if maybe you didn't score that try or somebody else scored it or whatever. I have no idea, but I think I'm obviously grateful that that did happen in the way that it did, because obviously it probably has opened up some of the doors along the way. I'm obviously very aware of that. Being named World Rugby Player of the Year, we play a team sport. Like I want to achieve things with my team, and yes, I always want to do the very best, and I kind of want to be the best player in the world, but not for the individual accolade, for the team bit. So it was really strange being there, obviously, basically by yourself on that night. You genuinely don't know who's won when you're sat around the table. And then obviously, I think it was Brian Habana read out my name. And I was sat next to Kendra, who was also a nominee and like unbelievable player. And she just looked at me and was like, kind of like, huge congrats type thing. So there's so much respect, I think, between, you know, all of us that have played a long time and have gone on to achieve certain things. But yeah, it's definitely never something I set out to achieve. Yeah, I'm also very aware it's very cool.
Now the players try and shoot forward. Oh, what a line from Emily Scarratt!
I'm Amy Cokayne. I play for Leicester Tigers and England. Emily Scarratt on the pitch, I would say, is very cool, calm, collected. She's probably done everything before, so she kind of has answers to most problems. And then off the pitch, she's very messy. If she's ever eaten anything, it's normally all down the front. So it's all this perception that she's very polished, but she's not. She's messy.
Little chips through. Now it's going to work. And guess what? Anything Sarah Bern can do, Emily Scarratt can do just as well.
I'm Sarah Bern and I play for Bristol Bears in England. Emily Scarratt off the pitch is loving, actually cuddly sometimes, and also really funny. She's just a very chill person. I love Emily Scarratt. On the pitch, Emily is a real leader. She is a problem solver, hard carrier.
Now for England, Amber Reid. Oh, the lovely offload for Emily Scarratt. And Scarratt's trying to scream all the way to the line, and she will.
My first big injury was 2021, I think, and it was an ankle break and dislocation. And the most frustrating thing about it, obviously the injury itself, but we'd had this mental pre-season, really, really tough. Felt in a really good place, and I did that 3 minutes into the first game of the season. So immediately I'm thinking all of that hard work, like it's just down the toilet. But obviously then you realise that you've also snapped your leg in half. And it was an open fracture, so it had basically popped out the skin. So we didn't obviously realise that until we were in the medical room and we'd cut the sock off. And obviously there it was. I remember the first thing I said to the medics was like, can someone make sure they get a picture of this, please? Because obviously I'm straight off the pitch, I don't have my phone. That probably paints a decent picture of like my mindset with things. Like I understand the sport I play. I also understand, you know, how things go sometimes. And actually then the rehab process starts. I was in a cast for 6 weeks, completely non-weight bearing on crutches, which is quite challenging, like, you know, stairs, carrying something, even something like making a cup of tea in the kitchen. Brilliant. How do I get that to where I want to drink it on the sofa? You do just daft things like that. For me, it was all about trying to make life as easy as I possibly could. You're not moaning about all the things you can't do because you're making things that you can do. The hardest bit I found was, so I obviously had the surgery initially, and I had a plate and screws down the side of my leg, and I also had a bolt through what we call syndesmosis. So I had a screw through holding the two leg bones together, basically. So anyway, I was back walking. So I got through a decent amount of process. I was back walking, feeling, you know, like a normal person again. And then we decided we were going to have that surgery to take the bolt out. And I think obviously then, I probably just hadn't really thought it through, but obviously then have surgery and then you're back on crutches and you're non-weight bearing and then you've got to go through all that again. And I think I just hadn't processed that. So then I felt like I've had something to make me better, but it's taken me back to almost the start again. So I struggled with that because I was back on crutches and back finding everything really difficult again and blah, 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 blah. So you do feel like you've gone backwards a bit. January 23, I suffered basically a bulging disc that was like pressing on my spinal cord essentially. So that was C5, C6, so quite high up essentially in your neck. Had a scan after the game where I initially had my kind of more severe symptoms and obviously diagnosed with the bulging disc and obviously compromised the cord and all of that stuff, which is quite a lot to take in at the time. And then it was all about, well, what happens next? Obviously, I'm a rugby player. All the medical people are like, they're just honed straight back into how do we get her back playing rugby, which is great. But obviously those things immediately turned to neck surgery, which at that time I just was not comfortable with. Like to me, and I appreciate people, everyone's different, like ankle surgery, thumb surgery, things on different parts of your body are different, I think, from surgery. Whereas somebody says neck surgery, spinal surgery, like to me, that's a hell of a lot of a bigger deal. I really wasn't comfortable with that. So there was obviously an option to basically wait, like discs often resolve themselves, they recover, but it does take a lot of time. So the window for that is like 6 to 9 months. So, but some can happen in 2 weeks, some could happen in, 12 months. There's just no way of knowing what will happen. So we kind of embarked on that journey. I was pretty adamant I didn't want neck surgery. So I was comfortable waiting as such. Obviously we had checkup scans along the way. They were kind of a bit demoralising because often it would be like, no change, no change, no change. So after a while I prepared myself for that. But obviously with that process, you then get to a point where you are at 9 months or whatever, the period of time that the specialists say is probably, if it's going to sort itself out, it would have happened by now. And basically I'd seen another consultant. And I think, if I'm honest, in my head, I was like, this is probably me. Like I've obviously had 15-year career, been to Olympic Games, like I've done unbelievable things that I never ever set out to do. So I think in my head I was like, I'm pretty happy. Like I still don't want to, go through a surgery that could really compromise the rest of my life. Saw another consultant, and obviously with that retirement piece in my head, I just asked him, I was like, so if I want to go and play netball tomorrow, like are we comfortable with, if I get a shot somewhere that, everything is kind of stable, I guess, if that's the right term, or I've got a young niece and nephew. If my niece comes flying at me, are we happy that everything's stable? And he basically said, we just wouldn't know. And then that, for me, that completely changed my thought process. So it wasn't just a case of get neck surgery to play rugby again. It was get surgery to hopefully, I guess, be the safest you can be for life. And it gives you an opportunity to play rugby again. So that was basically that whole thing. Like I still wasn't wild about the thought of having neck surgery. However, the reasons for it now were completely different, and that I was more comfortable with. So yeah, that's kind of where we got to. Obviously had neck surgery. I think it was 9-10 months into the whole process. Luckily, everything went well. And then, yeah, here we are. I've definitely been on a journey with like where me and my personality fits within a team over, this whole time. I think for anyone that was involved in the first few squads that I was involved with will testify, I probably didn't say a word for the first few years. Just because I am naturally a quieter person, but also I was 18 years old in a squad with, significantly older, significantly more experienced people, scary people as well, arguably at the time. You go on a journey because of how much more comfortable you feel in an environment, the friends that you make, and you're then kind of in a really comfortable social environment as well. And also then obviously as you become more experienced, you learn more about the game and you feel way more comfortable maybe inputting on certain things or, having an opinion because of the knowledge and experience that you built up over those years. You also grow as an individual, like from an 18-year-old to now a 30-whatever-year-old. Like you grow and you develop as a person. I am more of an introvert, but I also love being around the girls and I love being able to, have a laugh and a joke. I think sometimes come across a bit serious, but not that serious generally, like pretty laid back, all of those sorts of things. So, and I think that's what's brilliant about these environments is you kind of can be whatever you want to be. And also when you do grow up and you really understand yourself, like if, I don't know, Bots and Amy are going mental, I'll just be like, I'm leaving. Do you know what I mean? I'm just taking myself on that. Scaz, where are you going? I'm like, you guys have got this, I'm good. Do you know what I mean? And everybody understands that as well when you all understand one another. So I think, there's a natural journey, but also hopefully really understanding yourself and then being authentic to that as well. We were on the same team, so I'd come from being in the under-19s team the year before. They'd then changed the age group, so I'd been in and amongst it. I'd been around some of the girls. Obviously, there was like the returning group and then a load of newbies. Mo was one of the newbies. At that point, they basically just brought all the girls that they thought had potential together, put us into 2 teams, and we basically played and they watched, and then they picked a team from that. And all I remember in this trial game is, because I'd kicked the year before, so I was the kicker, I'd goal kicked. All I remember is someone had scored a try, and then obviously a few of the girls were like, oh, Scaz will kick it. So I'd gone over to the ball, and then Mo had basically come back past me and be like, are you comfortable kicking? Like, I can kick as well if you want. And that was my first thing, and I was like, who is this? But honestly, from then, like, we both got selected. We then went on a tour to Canada in 2008, which was like the best thing, because it was just a group of essentially teenagers going away, having the best time, like also super talented group. So we were quite successful with that team. Giselle Mather was our coach. And she just fostered this brilliant environment for us all to grow up and grow as rugby players. And it was a lot of fun. But yes, and we've just been kind of thick as thieves since then, really. Would I describe her as my best friend? Yeah, I describe her as my best friend. I always joke with her, I was like, if we'd have met as kids, I don't think we'd have got on. But because we met a bit later in life, we actually really got on. But no, it means a lot. Like, she's there if I ever need her. I'd like to hope she thinks the same for me. We check each other when, we think we're maybe a little bit off course or whatever. Really good, obviously fun to be around each other. She's slightly more annoying than I am, but I'm maybe a bit more serious than she is. So yeah, just there for advice, for obviously the love and attention that you also need in these environments. But yeah, she's a good girl. Stood in front of a camera with loads of people staring at you is definitely not my comfort zone. All the opportunities I've ever had have always come about because I was injured. So it's like the classic case of being injured, or can someone come and do this game or talk about this game or whatever. So it's never been something that I've kind of sought out. It's just something that's obviously happened, and then I've really enjoyed it because as lots of people know, I love talking about rugby. I'm really passionate about the game, and obviously for a long time there also wasn't a huge amount of people in that space, from certainly talking about the women's game from a pundit point of view. I think the podcast thing was definitely not my comfort zone, but I've started to grow and really, really enjoy it. When Alex Payne first came to me with the idea, I was literally, I think it was a phone call, but if he'd have seen my face, I think I was horrified that the thought of basically me fronting something like that. Obviously the name definitely wasn't my idea, but we're rolling with it still. But actually, as you get more comfortable with something and also understand what it's hopefully doing for the wider women's rugby space, the things that please me the most are when people comment on things being like, oh, it's so great to hear about such and such a story, or whatever it might be, or the live show because we got to meet Ellie Kildare. Do you know what I mean? All of those sorts of things that hopefully is that's the really cool bit, not me and Mo and Elma sat there talking rubbish half the time. It's hopefully what it's doing to other people that can make them feel closer to our game and us. It's quite challenging but really rewarding piece of where we're at in the game is obviously trying to give back as much as you possibly can, because everybody has that story of someone that came into their school and spoke to them, whether that was an athlete or someone in business or someone in a world that they could relate to or found inspiration in. Everyone has one of those, and I think it's super cool to now have the opportunity to be that for somebody else. Not everyone, because it won't resonate with everyone, but maybe that one little girl or boy that's like, okay, that's really cool, I want to push for that. I definitely don't think it's something that weighs heavy at all. I think it's a real privilege to be able to do that. I guess the only challenge sometimes is time to do that. We can't be everywhere to all people. I think that's why the games are really cool in terms of hopefully the time that we're able to spend post-game with all the fans that have travelled. Obviously, we've had a community programme this year where the girls have gone back to their local clubs or clubs in the area and been able to spend a bit more proper time there with things. I really do enjoy that side of things. And girls will do it differently. Like, a lot of the girls, are significantly better on social media than I am, and are actually able to do it like that because you can reach thousands, millions of people that way a lot easier. I'm probably a bit more old school and would prefer the personal touch, I suppose, mainly because I don't understand how to do that. But yeah, I think being able to do all of those things is a pretty cool thing at the moment.